Welcome back, Deconstructing Dallas. Ryan Trimble, Shawn Williams. Shawn, super excited. We are on site at the Bush Institute today, visiting with a guy that is really, I think, probably one of the most thoughtful guys in town.
And been on our list for a while.
Been on our list, and we're finally here live on video with him. He, of course, Cullum Clark, the director of the Bush Institute, SMU Economic Growth Initiative, also an adjunct professor of SMU at SMU of Economics, but he is here at the George Bush Institute. Cullum, thanks for coming on.
Shawn, Ryan, I am so honored to be with you and delighted to make it to the front of your list.
As we've told you, this is our second episode on video. We're changing up our format a little. So our first question off the top is about your favorite place in Dallas to eat.
Oh, gosh, let's see. I am an Asian food fan in general.
Okay,
right. So if I could say, it's hard to say one. We go pretty frequently to Shinsei for Japanese. I really like both Fortune House and Kirin Court. I love dumplings.
Okay.
So places like that.
Awesome.
Man, my kiddos like dumplings. This is a
I'm
new
making notes right now.
thing.
Yes.
I know.
You know what everybody loves is soup dumplings.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because if someone goes for the first time, if you try to take a bite into the middle of it, it floats all over your clothes.
Too bad.
So you got to know what you're doing.
It's all part of the experience.
It's for the veterans.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Well, Cullum, we've all obviously followed your work, and every time I turn around, I feel like I'm reading you in the morning news or hearing. I know you have a new podcast video piece that you're doing here at the Institute. But for our listeners and our viewers who don't know about you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm delighted to do so. I was born and raised in Dallas. Delighted to be doing what I do today. I was in the investment world for a long time. So I am in a second chapter in life, or maybe it's a third or a fourth. It depends on how you define it. I had what I sometimes call my crazy midlife dream. Of kind of an inner academic looking to get out to do something a little different than the business world. And I went back to SMU and I earned my Ph.D. in economics. And I graduated at, I hate to say my age, but I guess I will. I graduated at 50, not knowing what the future would hold. It was a leap of faith, but that leap of faith paid off because I got recruited to do two things that I love. So one is to lead the economic policy work of the George W. Bush Institute. I can tell you more about that. Yeah. And the other is to teach students at SMU and be involved in the life of the university. The Bush Institute is the think tank, and as President Bush likes to say, the do tank arm of the George W. Bush Presidential Center. We have a museum that I hope your listeners will come see. If they haven't, it's all about the Bush presidency and the American presidency in general. And when people say Bush Library, they really mean the archival records of the Bush presidency. Yeah. But in the Bush Institute, we are in the business of, as we put it, applying some timeless American values to the pressing issues of our own time. So I love being in the museum, but my job is to talking about the pressing issues of today.
So for you, Cullum, investments and economy, was there a mentor? Was there a flashpoint? How did you know that was the direction that you wanted to take your life?
I think, Shawn, I kind of drifted into the investment world. I'm not sure it was the best thought through scheme. You know how young people are, right?
Yep.
Trying to figure out what in the world to do. They were hiring. They paid pretty well.
Yep.
I sort of wound up in it. I will say, I'll mention a couple mentors along the way. I had a mentor I was very close to named Rusty Rose. And Rusty was one of the great investment people in the history of Dallas. Yeah. And he became a very close friend and mentor of mine. And he was supportive in what I did investment-wise. But what he really said that was very, I think, important in my life is he said, you're decently good at this investment stuff, but long term, I'm not sure that's what you ought to be doing. You ought to be doing something like, what I am doing today.
Yeah.
And that was something that, and I don't think he meant just don't do this because you're no good at it. I think he was saying, I think you have a calling.
Yep.
And I think he was right. So that was some important mentorship. I didn't act on it right away, but I ultimately did. Then I came to SMU as a pretty unconventional student. I was, mid 40s and had kids who were almost grown up and so forth. And I was really, really fortunate. Came into a great economics department. Nobody there in the department said, what in the heck are you doing here? They said, yeah, this guy seems like he's all in. Let's make this work. Let's just just, do the work.
Yeah.
And along the way, several people in the department were great mentors. But one I'll mention in particular is a guy who's one of my closest friends today named Klaus Desmet. And Klaus is a great urban economist. And he's done a number of other interesting things in economics as well. But he's an academic economist. He's a fantastic teacher of students at SMU, originally from Belgium. And when I first met him, I just thought, Klaus really has it going on. He's got some really interesting ideas. I looked at the papers that he'd written, and I asked, I'd just love to spend more time. Would you do an independent study with me? I'm pretty sure I can get credit for that, and we could just have lunch and talk through things you've written. He said, yeah, sure, let's do that. And in the process, it changed the whole course of what I was studying and what I do today, because it opened up some whole new fields of economics. And the main thing we talked about is what economists call urban and regional economics. And that is not just the question of how is the economy doing. It takes the question a little bit further, and it says, how is the economy doing right here in this city? Why is it doing maybe better here than in some other city? And that's a really deep set of questions. And I've been wrestling with those questions ever since we used to sit out on the terrace next to the econ department and have lunch and talk through all that kind of topic. So that was a really important mentor. And I will say finally, Ken Hirsch, our former CEO, now retired from it, but he's on our board. He recruited me to this. He supported me in everything I've done here. He oftentimes called me up to his office and said, well, I read this thing you wrote. I don't know about that. Let's talk that through. Never censored it. Never said you can't do it. He said, convince me. And we had a lot of really good conversations. So, he welcomed me into the second chapter. I don't think, everyone would have done that, took a chance on me. And once here, challenged me, stimulated me, supported me. So it's been the work I do. I definitely owe Ken a great deal of gratitude.
Cool. That's great. That's great. Now you mentioned urban and regional economies, and of course, we're sitting here in Dallas, in DFW, one of the hottest regions, remains pretty hot. What is it about this place, in your opinion, that has allowed for this incredible, tremendous, sustained growth, and how long do you think it can keep going?
Well, first of all, I've thought about that a great deal in a national context, and then try to apply it in DFW and elsewhere in Texas. I had the opportunity to co-author a book on we call the Texas Triangle, on the 4 big metropolitan areas of our state, including Dallas-Fort Worth, and they've all been pretty much rising together. Here's how I think about it. I think that you can say that there is, broadly speaking, a formula. Okay, I hate to boil it down, but I like to try to simplify things. There is a formula for being a relatively successful city or metropolitan area in 21st century America, and probably in the 21st century world. I don't think Dallas's model is not to be off the charts good at one thing. It's to be decently good across the whole thing. And the net result of being decently good across the whole formula is you're a big winner. So what is the formula? One is to essentially to provide what I would call reasonably priced, good quality of life, that people want to live there. Do they think it's an attractive place to live? Is it at least a somewhat reasonably priced? Super cheap is too much to hope for, because the only places that are super cheap are places nobody really wants to be. But the issue is, of all the places that people do want to be, do they do a good enough job on housing and infrastructure and things like that to keep it at least sort of kind of within the affordable range? Maybe we can talk about housing more about in Dallas in a moment, because we have lost some of our ground on that. But we have been, relatively speaking, we've had a big advantage on that. And I think people come here, oftentimes people on the coasts have a false image of Dallas. I don't think I have to tell you all, as long-time Dallasites. They think it's going to be, tumbleweeds blowing through, no trees, and, everybody in cowboy boots and, yada, yada, right? And they come here and they say, oh my gosh, this is nicer than I thought. It actually has a great arts district. It's got a great sports scene. It's got a magnificent restaurant scene, to come back to where we started to talk. It's got all these things. So that's one. Let me mention a couple others really fast on that, if I could.
Yeah, of course.
Other elements to the formula. Is it a great place to do business? Is it a place that has generally kind of business, commerce friendly policies, where it's a good place rather than a bad place to do business? You got to get that right. And I think that undoubtedly we do. A third is, I think the places that are succeeding have a kind of relentless focus on education and immigration, not immigration, that's another thing. Education, I meant to say, and innovation. They are places that are really invested in educating their young people and fostering an environment in which, people and businesses are innovating. And I think in that respect, I think Dallas, it was kind of a late comer. I wouldn't say we were probably a great winner on education or innovation in our earlier history, but then of course you had, the invention of the semiconductor chip in Dallas by Bob Kilby, invented alongside Robert Noyce, Jack Kilby, excuse me, and Robert Noyce, and then a whole series of things, Texas Instruments, EDS, and so forth. And we've done a really good job, I think, of bringing up our universities. So our education, we're gaining on the leaders. And then I did finally mean to say welcoming newcomers, including from around the world. We've done very well at that. We have a gigantic population of immigrants from everywhere here in Dallas, and they're contributing tremendously to our economy. So across the formula, there's no respect in which we're an underperformer. We're somewhere between decently good and actually very good.
Interesting. And so you mentioned housing. Maybe we're slipping a little bit. Can we keep this going at being decently good to really good?
Yeah, I worry all the time. I think I'm a raging bull on the future of Dallas and the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Sure.
But I learned in the investment business, if you are bullish on something, let's say a stock, you better at least think through what are the holes in the case. What could go wrong, right? So what are the potential holes in the case? I would say these are the big ones. Will we become unaffordable like the coastal cities of California have done? Will we fully stay in the game in terms of preparing young people through education and the workforce that can do mid-21st century work competitively with any place else in the country? I think we're putting up a good fight, but the story's not written. This is a competitive game. Can we figure out our power and water issues? I think we can, but there's some complexity around that. The most pressing one, I think, is housing, because that is an area where we actually have lost a lot of competitive ground relative to some of the places that we compete with over about the last 10 or 12 years. If I analyze that real fast, I would say it's not that we're terrible at it. We're better than most places at building more housing in the city of Dallas, and we're much better than most places if you take the whole metropolitan area. But there was a giant growth in demand to live here. And I think despite all our best efforts, supply could not keep up. And that just drove prices a whole lot higher. And we had a bit of a crazy housing market. It's cooled off a little bit last couple of years, but that is a very serious challenge. There's some particular aspects where we don't do a very good job, and I'm pretty involved in efforts to try to shore those up. So housing is a top challenge for us.
So you've got your kind of first kind of chapter where you were on the investment side and kind of have the investment lens. Now you're economic policy kind of from an education kind of public sector side. So you're looking through a public and private lens, which a lot of folks aren't when you're talking about these issues that you just went through. So how do you either, bounce those two off of each other or integrate those two as you're advising and consulting folks about the regional economy?
I'm so glad you asked that, Shawn, because I love trying to integrate them all together. I think sometimes people think these are totally different things. I think of it as I get up in the morning, I read a lot of news, I read a lot of books, I read a lot of things. I talk to a lot of people, and as far as I'm concerned, it's all one big effort to try to understand what's going on as well as possible and try to be useful in the world to whoever will listen, whether it's if I can get the students to engage in class or whoever we meet out there, in the Dallas world and elsewhere. So how specifically to do it? Well, I will say this quick aside on investing. If getting a Ph.D. in economics made you a great investor, then we would have a bunch of Ph.D. economists who are multi-billionaires. And as we don't, I'm afraid that a Ph.D. in economics gives you some good insights, but it doesn't actually make you a great investor. But that said, I am on SMU's investment committee. I'm on a couple other nonprofit boards that have me pretty involved in investing. So that continues to be a part of my life. But in the other direction, I would say that for sure, the experience with the private sector around finance and so forth absolutely informs everything we do. In the housing space, I think it means understanding how capital works how we actually finance things, and recognizing, like, as a simple proposition, that if the math doesn't work, then the private sector won't fund more housing. And so you kind of need to understand how the math works if you want to see more housing.
Deconstructing Dallas, we are with Cullum Clark here at the Bush Institute at SMU. When we come back, we're going to deconstruct a couple of questions related to the economy and related to Dallas-Fort Worth. So hang with us through the break. Deconstructing Dallas, Ryan Trimble, Shawn Williams. Be right back right after this.
Welcome back. Deconstructing Dallas, Ryan Trimble, Shawn Williams, here with our friend Cullum Clark at the Bush Institute here at SMU. Now, Cullum, we're going to jump into a segment we like to call Deconstruct This. Of course, we are deconstructing Dallas, so we're going to break it down here. So,
I love it.
First question off the top, Cullum, how are the rise in populist and protectionist policies affecting the economic well-being of our country, and what impact do those policies have on our lives here in Dallas?
Sure. Texas is a state that is unusually dependent on and benefiting from international trade. We've got a very, very busy border with Mexico and very, very busy port cities facing the ocean along our coast. And the DFW area is the #1 location in the country not on a coast for moving goods around the country. It's the logistics capital of our country in many respects. So we are extremely dependent on moving goods around and doing it very efficiently. So the trend we've seen towards trade protection, I think, is it's maybe understandable in terms of some of the stresses we have out there in our economy. But I think we at the Bush Institute really don't believe that long term it's the answer. We think that history overwhelmingly supports the general intuition that Americans on the whole, on average, have benefited. We have all kinds of great export industries here in the state of Texas, famously oil and gas, but the semiconductor industry. We manufacture all kinds of things in Texas that go out all over the world and represent a great many jobs. I think that what we're experiencing is it's been a recurring theme in American history. As the country has developed, we've generally speaking gotten more involved with the rest of the world, and that inevitably produces stresses. And periodically, there have been you could say periods in which kind of the more populist forces went out for a time, and generally speaking, it's been a story of ebb and flow. So we'll see what happens next.
Yeah.
So we hear a lot about workforce education these days, whether it be in Austin, we work with Dallas College with our clients, and also our mutual friend Lynn McBee, the workforce czar here in Dallas. Friend. Yes. So can you talk about, you talked about education in the first segment. So how does workforce education, is that part of the story for our economy moving forward?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is in several respects. I think, first of all, there is just a general understanding that we and all cities everywhere in our country need to do a better job of preparing more of our young people, ideally preparing all our young people, to have thriving lives, to participate in the workforce and earn a living wage and contribute to the greater good through their talents. And we're nowhere close to where we need to be. It is roughly half the young people will grow up and by their mid-20s not have earned a degree or credential that is valued in the workplace. This is a major topic of our education work here at the Bush Institute. We need to do a lot better. So what does that mean on the workforce front? I think there is an understanding that in general here and all over America, we need to prepare more people to do a bunch of occupations that are really important, but don't have enough people going into them. That includes nursing, which my middle daughter does. We're very proud of her for doing that. That includes being in the building trades, being an electrician, being an HVAC repair person. These are all actually pretty well-paying, good jobs. And we know Dallas College does a great job. We know how to train people to do them. The issue is to actually successfully recruit the young people into them and help them get past some of the obstacles they'll face. I think another challenge is the big employers here will inevitably say, Dallas isn't growing the workforce that we need. And I think the very simple answer on that is, all of you people who are saying that need to get in the game.
Right. We need you to help jump in the pool.
Right. You got to jump in, because you can't just wait for academia which does not typically move at the same speed as a business.
All due respect. If anybody here, that's
I love academia. I love every moment of being involved in it. But you can't ask the people in a department someplace academically to somehow read the minds of the people, the employers who are in some, tech business or logistics business or whatever. The employers got to get in the game. So that's something we need to do. And I think something that Lynn and Mayor Johnson have worked on a lot also, to their credit, is the idea that we need to help people be lifelong learners. And that means that when they're adults, and I think Mayor Johnson sometimes has talked about his story of his mother. Someone's, part of the way along in life, and they'd like to retool, and they want to figure out new ways they can, improve their skills. We got to be great at that. And I think we're working at it, but we got a ways to travel.
Well, Cullum, that's great. And I think you successfully deconstructed those questions. So I want to jump in to a lightning round. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. First one off the top. Tell us your favorite story about President Bush.
He meets regularly with the staff, and we all have opportunities to just ask whatever we want to ask. And every one of those is fascinating. And sometimes it's very serious issues of public policy. But I think some of the most interesting questions are, tell us what you've been reading, tell us what shows you've been watching, who you've been meeting with, because they have amazing lives. Yeah. And I will say they have recommended so many streaming shows that my wife and I have gone home and watched, and they know about it before anybody else does. President and Mrs. Bush. I don't know how that is. Another thing he did one time that was great. I got to plan a secret or a surprise drop-in by President Bush at the SMU Economics Department. I knew, and the chairman of the department knew he was coming, and nobody else. Total shock to the faculty.
I'm sure.
And then he said, "Thanks for all the good work y'all do. What do you want to talk about?" And I think that they thought they could stump him with economics questions, right? And they didn't. He completely surprised them with, obviously a well-read person with enormous experience. But I'm talking about deep into antitrust, into infrastructure questions. And so that was actually a very memorable moment.
That's very cool. Okay, I've got one more. I didn't know this about you. You sit on the National Council for the World Wildlife Fund. How did you come into that position?
Kind of through my dad. I think for several generations back, I think I come from a kind of a line of people who have been sort of natural environmentalists who just like being out in nature, care about the natural world, and worry about it. My dad was a really passionate environmentalist. He passed away in 2016. And I was always really proud of what he was doing. And he had gotten very involved in WWF, World Wildlife Fund, a wonderful global organization with some really great activities in the U.S. And, I just got to know the people he had worked with, and kind of wanted to take up where he had left off. So we've tried in our small way. Also, my a couple of my daughters have gotten pretty involved in it as well.
Cool. Very cool.
WWF for a second, I thought you were involved in
not
something
the
totally
wrestling,
different. Just for a quick second, I thought
Shawn.
Totally
different. Strange
fact. It'll be a whole other conversation.
We have two organizations for those initiatives.
But this is Ryan said this is a quick hit, so I got to get to it. So we have a lot of folks who listen for leadership advice, and we've got some entrepreneurs who listen. And so for people who are trying to build or scale a business in this particular economy, what kind of advice would you have for them?
Read massively. Take in information wherever you can. When you have a chance to meet people who know interesting things, ask them about their lives and about their business, about whatever it is they're working on. You never stop learning if you just keep asking and listening. Treat people well. They'll remember. You'll get paid back in all kinds of unexpected ways. Work hard, stay at it, have a certain degree of patience, be nimble, all those things.
Well, this has been great. This is not only a great place to do this interview, but it's great talking to you and also the folks who worked with us. For people who are watching or listening to this podcast, how can they find out more about you or also the Bush Institute?
We have a great website, bushcenter.org, an enormous amount of work that we have published, including quite a few pieces that I've written about things that we're talking about today, about housing, about workforce development, the future of Dallas and Texas and America. So lots of things to find on bushcenter.org.
Well, Cullum, this has certainly been a pleasure. We really appreciate you coming on the show today, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Ryan. An honor to be with you.
All right. Absolutely. This is Deconstructing Dallas. Ryan Trimble, Shawn Williams. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Deconstructing Dallas. Ryan Trimble, Shawn Williams. Man, what a great interview with our friend Cullum Clark, Shawn.
That was fun. I wish we could have got a little bit. It seems like with every guest, there's a little bit that doesn't make it to air. That's really cool. The Hamilton conversation that we were having. Man, if only we could get a little bit of that.
I knew once you got lathered up at Hamilton, it was,
I was in it. I was in it. Yeah, I might have to come out at the class. Seriously. If I'm invited, I would
It
do
sounds
that.
like the invite was out there.
Well, we're not going to take too much time before we get out of here, but this is the time when some people just go ahead and hit stop. Hopefully they won't, because
Dominique, you can hit stop now.
She's all off into college football playoffs. She was watching the rankings before I was, I have to say.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
but there's some good college football. SMU is still in the mix.
SMU's in the mix.
Still, as
my
I
friend.
said, it's about
As of
the
time of
conference.
recording,
The time of recording, the conference is still in play. Conference championship.
conference championship still in play. And like my friend Sean P. Williams always says, just win.
Thank you so much for another great show. Thank you to our hosts here at the Bush Institute. We're so excited for the hospitality that we received. Thank you to Cullum Clark, our guest, for being such a great guest on our second live episode. Thank you to Nicole and Chloe for winding us through to where we recorded our podcast and helping us get set up. It's a lot here. We're going to do a behind the scenes one day. It's a lot for this setup to make it look good, but they really helped us out a lot. So thank you very much. Thank you to Alan, the entire Alan team. Thank you to our producer, Zach Thompson. Thank you to Deborah Meek, who accompanied us to this recording and attends all of our meetings and makes sure that we're on track. Thank you to the entire Allen team, starting with our owners, Mary Woodleaf, Jennifer Pascal. Thank you to Jessica Moore, who is helping us with the website, with our video, with our social media. And thank you, of course, to our listeners. Thank you for not only being listeners, but now being viewers. We can put those two numbers together, and wow, it is amazing. It has doubled. Amazing. So thank you so much to our listeners and our new viewers. Make sure to share this podcast. So much great information. You want to make sure people not only catch this, but go back and listen to the previous episodes. We've got 8 years worth of podcasts. And even talking to Cullum, he's like, man, so many of my friends have been on. So everyone needs to go back and check that out. For Ryan Trimble, this is Shawn Williams, Deconstructing Dallas. Adios.